Hello, all. Welcome to another episode of Direct Shift Stories. This is Raj Misa, and I'll be the host. I'll be moderating today's event. This is a live webinar. In case if you're watching or catching us live, please do put in your comments. Let us know your questions. So we have amazing content for next 45 minutes or 30 to 45 minutes for you today. I'm super excited to share it with you and with one of our special guests today. I just wanted to go over a few housekeeping rules. First of all, this is live webinar and it'll be recorded, and you will also get an email with this recording in the next couple of business days, probably 2 business days. And apart from the recording, there will be a few of the participants who can also hop in or put in your questions in the chat. And lastly, there will be a survey at the end. Probably you can share us your feedback as to how we can improve on this. And if you'd like to be part of a speaker, again, do share in your comments, and let's welcome and let's find out how licensed clinical social workers are solving the mental health crisis in the country. And let's welcome Sara Ruffin. She's a licensed clinical social worker who is also a psychotherapist from Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. Welcome, Sara Ruffin. And she can give her intro, and we can go on and on with the kind of bachelor's degree in social work. And thank you so much, Vamshi, for this wonderful opportunity. Over to you guys. Thank you.
Thank you, Raj. Thanks for making this happen. Yet again, going to be a very power-packed Direct Shift Stories podcast. Sara, once again, thank you for being here with us. It's a pleasure. It's always a pleasure interacting with clinicians like you who are making a huge change in the world. I know we may not be able to do a lot of justice to an introduction. You've been there. You've been a clinical social worker, and now you actually have seen the need for more social workers and therapists to enter the area because the country needs to heal through therapy. And you're doing a lot of work in helping people get licensed. So please, give us a little more about your background, how you got to where you are today, and give a little introduction about the work that you're doing in enabling more people become licensed social workers.
Well, thank you so much for having me. Hi, everybody. So my name is Sara Ruffin. I am a licensed clinical social worker. I've been in the field of social work for about 17, almost 18 years now. I have about 10 specializations. I have a company that I founded 7 months ago. It's called Journey to Licensure, where I help clinicians, specifically social workers, become licensed in the field. So that's one of the barriers is licensure, which prevents a lot of social workers to meet high demand, which is what we're facing right now with the pandemic going on. So that is what I do. I help social workers pass their boards. I also help them with professional development. As already previously stated, I am a former psychotherapist. I have about 10 special, and I'm board certified in telemental health and hold 3 social work national credentials in leadership, healthcare, as well as clinical skills. So that's me.
Perfect. Thank you, Sara, for that introduction. The quick questions are more of a brainstorming point. Are there enough resources for people to easily start their journey to becoming a licensed social worker? What would you recommend? Where should somebody start if they are willing to do this?
So it depends on where they are in the journey, right? So if they are, some states require a bachelor level licensure. Not every state does. So there are 3 levels of license: at the bachelor level, the master level, and at the clinical advanced level. So for social workers, the whole point of getting licensed is to protect the public, but it's also to negotiate salary. And it shows your competency level in the level of mastery that you have at your degree level. So, and for us in social work, we can't be called social workers legally until we have a license. So hopefully that gives kind of an overview, but so it depends on first where the person is. If they are graduating from a bachelor program, I definitely recommend at any level that they look at getting licensed as quickly as possible, depending on their state. Again, it's not nationally in regards to what's required, because every state has their own requirements regarding what level, depending on where you are degree wise, which one to get. So if you're bachelor level, Some states require the licensure at that level. Some states don't. When I graduated 10 years ago with my master's, at that time, they didn't require a bachelor level licensure. They're starting to implement licensure at the bachelor's level starting. So now we'll have three different rigorous license exams that we have to take instead of just two.
Got it. Okay. And with respect to completing the journey and really landing an opportunity, what do you recommend people getting licensed as licensed clinical social workers? What are some of the career opportunities that they have?
So from a perspective, if we're looking at employee opportunities, there are so many when you become licensed. At the bachelor level, you're able to negotiate salary. You make a certain type of income compared to someone that isn't licensed and just has their bachelor degree. Same thing at the master level. So to give you an example of that, when I graduated a decade ago, even at the master level, and I didn't have a license, I was still making about a good $20,000 less than someone that had their licensure. So having your licensure actually not only gives you employee opportunities, but it puts you in track for whatever the next one is. So bachelor level licensure, you have more opportunities for mostly monetary reasons, but it's also for a regulatory perspective from the professionals, our national boards, to make sure that we are licensed at that level to protect the public, because we are handling people's lives. And that's the whole point of licensure, period. And it doesn't even matter, not just for social workers, but psychiatrists, psychologists, anyone that's a mental health provider. That licensure tells the public that they're serving that I am adequately competent in being able to serve you at this level.
Got it. Thank you for that information.
I'm trying to keep it less technical.
No, I think that really helps, especially because
there's so many.
Exactly, there's so many steps. Plus, I think the need is now to help people with better resources, making it easier for them to go through the steps, because the statistics show there is a huge supply problem to the demand that we are seeing now for people to get help. So let's talk a little more on why do you think the gap has happened, like people requiring that the healing, the therapy, and the help, but there are not enough licensed professionals in the country to actually provide that care. Why do you think the gaps happen?
Well, there are a couple of reasons. I think it also depends on there are barriers. I know, and I can speak to this personally for clinicians of color. So it's very much unrepresented in terms of clinicians compared to other counterparts. In terms of the barriers to financing, getting a bachelor's degree or a master's in social work, it costs money depending on the school you go to. If we're talking about an Ivy League school like University of Pennsylvania, 10 years ago was $60,000 for 1 year. Howard University 10 years ago was $30,000 for 1 year, which is what I paid for my advanced standing. I did 3 semesters. And advanced standing just means that if you have a bachelor's in social work, you can fast track your master's by doing 1 year. It's usually 1 to 3 semesters, depending. Well, one year to a year and a half, depending on the school that you go to. But either way, whether you cut it up, a master's degree is pivotal in social work, in order for us to have more options in our career to progress. And that LCSW, some states call it LICSW, either licensed clinical social work or licensed independent social work. That license enables you to go into private practice, and it enables you to get to work with government contracts, to kind of be the layman's terms, to be your own boss, but also to provide a wide range of care in a different way than you would be if you were at the master level and licensed there. We have to hit supervision requirements also. So we're not allowed to practice privately until we have hit our requirements for our LCSW. That usually typically takes 3,000 hours, 2 years.
Got it. Okay. So I think we have a comment or a question here, but thank you for that information. I think it helps a lot.
Yeah.
Like, I think we spoke a little bit about why the supply gaps happen, but how COVID-19 has really exposed the gaps in mental health care. You have any comments on it?
I do, because I've experienced it personally. For me, I can tell you, when the pandemic, I had 3 kids at home. I was depressed at the time. I couldn't pass my board exams, which is why I do what I do now. And I struggled. I lost health care. I didn't have insurance. I was depressed. I have ADHD, generalized anxiety disorder, and learning disorder. So it was hard for me to test. Without passing that exam, that LCSW, I probably wouldn't be talking to you now. I'd probably be trying to study again. But when I lost my job, I literally was kind of stuck for a whole entire year, and I took the exam and I passed it. But it took a lot to even get to that point of passing with the pandemic, having 3 kids at home, 7, 10, and 14, where they're doing remote schooling, and balancing home life and trying to keep things together while also trying to figure out how am I going to study for this exam, and everything stopped. Yeah. So that also kind of backs up licensing boards in different states. Their processes slowed down, applications slowed down, everything kind of shifted or stopped. People that were planning on taking their exam, they're now backed up months to a year. It took me exactly 1 year when it literally was supposed to take 90 days. So you have a ripple effect in terms of the processes of what it takes to get licensed. The pandemic kind of crushed it with people's jobs, staffing is an issue. So the regulatory boards having to work from home, it slows down the process in terms of getting licensed. So that was one thing. I know in some states, they called an emergency protocol where they would alleviate some of the restrictions, even for doctors or people that were in residencies, because the demand was so high and we had such a high death rate. So when we talk about the pandemic, I always have to look at it from a micro perspective and then a macro, right?
Yeah.
So in terms of how everything stopped, job loss, economy, mental health then rises, right? Because people become isolated. And that's also something I personally experienced as well. So I think it's multifaceted. When it comes to barriers right now, there aren't a lot of providers, because some of the providers need help themselves, right?
Yeah. Yep.
So there's that piece. There's compassion fatigue, burnout, as well. I'm not saying it's like, oh my God, it's horrible. What I'm saying that there are definitely some gaps that need to be filled in terms of licensing requirements, especially right now, maybe easing restrictions to get more people licensed so they can serve more communities.
Got it. No, I think that's a great point, especially what you talked about. There is also fatigue going on, even in the existing providers. There is a lot of fatigue going on because of which burnout and their capacity is limited. Having said that, Sara, I think you bring up a good point, which is a lot of processes have been lagging because of COVID. They had to shut down offices and all of that. Purely from providing the therapy perspective, a lot of remote teletherapy practices have evolved, have been designed, launched quickly. There are certain big teletherapy companies that we work with as well in providing them with the staffing, helping them recruit the therapists and social workers. At Direct Shifts, we are working with a lot of those companies in being their augmentation for recruitment and connecting the clinicians, the therapists directly to them, to staff them, to provide for all of their patients. So has the evolution of these remote technologies, the teletherapy and all those things, has that started, in your opinion, to solve the problem of capacity from a supply perspective and providing that better access for people, especially with COVID? You have to socially distance. Have you started seeing that where patients are saying, well, this is great, now I can get therapy from anywhere, it is more accessible, so I'm going to utilize it more?
Yes, I think we've kind of seen what the pandemic has done. People, I mean, besides that, I was thinking about telehealth, but I was also thinking about like the movies, right? People are like, oh, I'll just stay home. It's convenient. So I think what telehealth is, it's the same component. It's very convenient. Again, some people do argue that you're not getting the same interaction. It also depends on what the generations and populations that you're talking about. If it's, people that are more elderly, how do you make sure that they're able to navigate technology? Do they have a caretaker that can help them with that? Because of course it does take a little bit of knowledge of how that technology works, right? When you do telemental health, even from a provider aspect, one of the gaps I still see and that I constantly preach about to clinicians is this board certified telemental health credential, which is one that I hold. I actually had to take a test for that. It's so important that providers are competent. I feel like with the pandemic, it was a rush, right,
Yeah.
to provide telemental health services, but at what cost, right? Because there's things ethically that need to be put in place for even technology to make sure that clients are still protected, data, right? HIPAA compliance. Those things update constantly. And it's something that needs to be constantly reviewed and updated by regulatory boards.
Got it. Got it. No, that's a great point. I think um, going through the right training to be telemental health competent, especially from a provider perspective, is important. Like you said, there is more capacity being created for sure, but at what cost? I think we'll all have to remember we cannot compromise the quality of the therapy and the practice because there is now a rush. Absolutely. I think well said. So let me draw a parallel here. For example, doctors, in order to increase their productivity when they're dealing with the technology systems, the EMRs of the world,
Yeah.
they use scribes and nurses. They have help like putting through the documentation, going through all the steps involved in completing their visit, etc. Are there such things that would help, let's say, a telemental health provider or a
Mhm.
therapist or a social worker when they are providing their therapy services, in order for them not to get burnt out because now there is a huge demand? What resources like scribes, etc.? That's just a parallel. It doesn't need to be a scribe. But what do you think of resources that they could use in order for them to like complete things or not really feel burnt out? Because typically therapists are doing all of this all by themselves, right? They have to go
Yes.
through. So what do you
Training.
think? Yeah.
I think that, I mean, for me, when I was first, I said, okay, here's a good example. I wanted to get telehealth mental health training. I didn't know what was out there.
Hmm.
So what was happening? There's this educational component. It's called PESI, really big national credentialing service. They provide a lot of continuing education service for a lot of social workers, psychiatrists, and different providers. So they started around the pandemic. They started doing courses on telemental health. I was like, oh, okay, this is something I may be interested in doing because I thought I was going to go into private practice. What was happening is I started seeing some providers with this credential, BCTMH. What was that? So I was
Hmm.
like, okay, I'm seeing all these generic telemental health things, telehealth stuff. I want to know, is there a central place that has a credential that I should have that's nationally credentialed? And there is. So under NBCC, was National Board for Continuing Credentialing Services, there is board certified telemental health provider. That credential is, you have to pass a exam for it. It's like 50 questions, multiple choice, but it is hard. It's not easy. It took me
Yeah.
2 times to actually pass it. It's open book, but it requires you to go through a module, and after you pass, it's like a secondary license. You have to every year get continuing education credits in certain HIPAA compliance, technology, ethics, on top of your licensing requirements to continue to keep that credential up. It's not one of those things where you just get it, oh, I have this, and it's over. You have to do CEUs to keep it up every year. So you're confident in what the technology, how it changes, because it does. I really, truly believe that clinicians, they have to become confident. It's actually in our code of ethics for social workers. We cannot practice something that we ethically have no knowledge of. Now that's happening, isn't it? Right? So people again are being thrown, this pandemic, people have been thrown into working from home, but not really able to navigate the technology well or don't know how. So I think that's where adequate training comes in. There are a couple of resources, I can't name them off the top of my head, connected to the board certified telemental health that I actually was able to work with to get trained. So if people are interested in that, they can definitely message me and I can send that resource. At the moment, I have like a brain fog. I had back-to-back sessions today, so my mind is just a little boggled. But there are resources out there. I think it's just a matter of knowing
Yeah.
who to talk to.
Yeah. Got it. And is that the exact reason why you actually switched from active practice to really helping people? Because there are not many people that can act as resources guides. Is that the main reason?
Well, no, I found, so my process was very, very long when I got licensed. My LCSW, literally took me 10 years post grad. It
Hmm.
takes 2 years. But life kicked in. And when I graduated from Howard University, life kicked in. I had a lot going on in my life that kind of deterred me a little bit off that path. Worked for a couple of years. Then I got my master level license. But because of my disability and my anxiety and my ADHD, I had to take my master level exam twice. So I missed it the first time in 2011 by 3 points. Gave up on it, took it 2 years later and passed it by 2013 by about 25 points. LCSW, same thing, 2019, took it, missed it by 2 points, passed it again, and passed it by like 15 points over the margin. The process to licensing, people find it difficult if they don't know how to study. So that's where I come in. I've been doing this about 7 months. I've passed about 65 social workers on bachelor's, master's, and clinical level so far with the system that I actually put in place, which was the same one that I use. I feel that what I've got is that a lot of people don't know how to study and they don't have guidance or they don't have support. They don't know where to go for it. So that's why I created my company. It was birthed out of my 10-year struggle to get licensed. There are a lot of tutoring companies out there, but the part that I find that's missing is the component of looking at it from a holistic perspective in terms of everyone has, especially right now, you have anxiety going on. Some people have neurological conditions going on. Some people have life, pandemic, not a lot of money, parents to take care of, pressures. And, giving someone a book saying, here, go study, I don't think it's the answer, especially right now. So me having that personal experience of struggling with my exams, having 10 specializations, 3 of them I'm diagnosed with, being able to speak from a personal experience of going through that struggle, I think that's where most of my power lies in terms of being able to, and also my clinical experience, being able to get people to have a structure, being able to make sure people incorporate self-care in their study, because studying is it's a tiny bit of the process. You have your whole life to build around that. So most of my coaching is between wellness and self-care for the soon-to-be provider, trying to groom them, teaching them to take care of themselves while they're doing this, but also making sure that they are getting what they need in terms of the strategies and the right study material. There's a lot of different materials out there and people just really get caught up, and so people here say, buy this, buy that, and they waste so much money when they need that one-on-one attention, or they may just need the process of how do I do this? Where do I start? What are the resources? And that's what I'm building now.
No, absolutely. That's a great point, Sara. Sometimes people could get lost in the ocean of information that exists out there, especially we live in the age of information and data. But having guides like you is really what's going to make a huge difference for them so that they know exactly where to go, how to expedite the process. Now, you are an LCSW, QCSW, ACSW. I can go on and on and on. There is no way anybody can even think for a moment that you had any learning disability. It is very clear you used your challenges as opportunities to excel. And you're now doing the same thing for others. So, before we end this, there's a lot of good information that you've provided, but any final remarks on our comments, thoughts on how you used your challenges as opportunities to excel and how you're trying to make others do the same thing?
Well, if I had to think of, that's a very loaded question, but if I had to sum it all up, my experience, my life experience, actually, because my background, I come from a low income family. I had to fight my way through school in terms of getting the education that I needed. I was the first one to graduate with my master's and my bachelor's degree in my family. So there's a lot of first there, being a first generation college student and then grabbing my master's. You have to see your vision clearly. If you can't see it, you're not going to do it. And there are going to be things that life just keeps throwing at you. You have to be willing to take what life throws at you and find another way around it. I don't have like a clear magical thing. I don't. For me, I constantly, every time I had a challenge, I would get stuck. But I constantly would just push and keep pushing, because every day, even if it was a failure, I would take that. Okay, I failed this day. I'm going to try something different. A lot of people look at failure as it's such a bad thing. It's not. It's a learning experience, and being able to take that and fail as many times as you need to. That's how you learn. So for me, that if I could sum it up and think about what my experience has been from where I was even a year ago to being able to have a company that I just trademarked as of yesterday and end up in Business Insider about 3 weeks ago. I would have never imagined where I was if I didn't step out and tell my story. And that's how I'm going to end this. So
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for that, because even if we are able to make one provider go through the training and get them added to the ecosystem, or if you're able to save one provider from giving up their practice, it makes a huge difference, because right now we need lot more clinicians to serve the patient population and the population in the country than what we have today. So what you're doing is changing the world in a positive way, Sara. We at Direct Shifts very much appreciate that, because we are living in the world of clinicians, trying to get them the staffing and job opportunities, connecting them to the employers directly. We know some of the pain points that clinicians face, and we fully appreciate the need for guides like you who are spending their time, energy, and resources in making more clinicians of the future. So thank you so much for that.
thank you.
And thank you again for being here with us today. I didn't even know how the last 30 minutes just flew by.
It
Was a
really.
pleasure. It was a pleasure having you on our platform.
Thank you. It's a pleasure being here.
Thank you, Sara. Thank you, Vamshi. So in fact, it was an awesome thing, Sara. You added in lots of value. Definitely, as you mentioned, people are struggling, having no money. There's lots of pressure, no lack of training with respect to technology. So definitely, if anybody is watching the replay, save your couple of years. Okay, save 5 years, 8 years. Go back to journey to licensure. So get it done in less than 2 years with help of Sara, because she had been through that experiential journey. Thank you so much, and thank you, Vamshi. You can also catch this replay through Google Podcast, Apple Podcast. We'll share you the links. And anything else before we end this live, Vamshi, Sara?
No, I mean, after you end it, Sara, if you can hang on for a couple minutes.
Sure, no problem.
Yeah, I'll end this live for time being. Thank you so much for all the other viewers who were tuned in, or whoever is going to catch the replay. Thank you all.
Thank you.